So our next speaker is the author of a book called Hidden Records, looking at ancient civilizations and star maps and many other fascinating subjects. He's come from Cape Town for the weekend, so please give a warm welcome to Wayne Herschel.
What were the ancients thinking? The question obviously is why would they build giant megaliths, pyramids, and is there any connection between these ancient civilizations? Well, my research looks into something that I prefer to describe as hidden records that are not easily available. And in the last few years, I've found that they were also forbidden because my book was interfered with, and I've had in the US market, had my book removed 4 times, and I'm in the 5th time doing it now. So there's something in here that isn't quite making people in the world happy, some very important people, but you can see for yourselves what you think it might be. I'm going to put this right by my mouth. Okay. My first slide. A picture of the earth and the stars. Now, if there was some kind of message in ancient civilizations from where we came from, wouldn't we be looking for their fingerprints, stars, star formations, and is there anything that we can find? And of course, where do we come from? That's one of the biggest important questions to any human being is who are we? Where do we come from? The missing link is a real scientific fact. There's a huge bridge between hominid and humans. And if I found something that was unanimous with all of them, wouldn't that be possible proof? If it's a statistical figure that comes up hundreds of times. The stars you see there, the little blue stars at the top, I can use the laser here, over there, are the Pleiades, and Orion on the left, over there, are the 2 star formations that seem to be most common in history. It seems up until the time of the end of the Neanderthal, we have a very primitive hominid record on all the records of skeletons and human remains. I wouldn't call this chappie human because he's far from human. That is a recent rebuild of the Neanderthal face. So up until maybe 200,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, this is the creature of this planet. Our planet was the planet of the apes for a very long time, until just recently, the blink of an eye, 200,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, suddenly we're everywhere. Replaced by what? Modern humans of all races in every continent, suddenly. The dating of this we'll question in part 2 tomorrow, but I honestly believe it was an invasion. I believe we are the descendants of people that came here. They had a very advanced beginnings, but something wiped us clean off the slate that brought us back to hunters and gatherers. And I believe the flood did that, and we'll look into those details. Just to get a bit of star information, Orion's belt. Following the stars, most people know the 3 belt stars of Orion. The brightest star is Sirius. There's the 3 belt stars. You just follow the row to get to Taurus, the celestial bull. It was sacred in ancient civilizations. And of course, the Pleiades down here, and an important star. Looking at those 2 constellations, that's all you have to remember. Just those 3 are very important to point the way to something in the sky that's important. And the leg formation can be used as a pointer. It looks like a celestial leg of the bull. The Egyptians said it was the leg of the bull, following it to there. So we have 2 coordinates. Or if you measure from here, you can measure actually 33 degrees of arc measurement in the sky. Astronomers measure in arc degrees. That's 33 degrees from that piece of Orion right up to there. If you're looking closely at the stars, you'll see the star maps have got one very important monument. If you look at all of them, this is a very important part in the sky. Secondly, there's another one down here. You can just see it. That'll come up a lot in the next few slides. So there's the Pleiades, very nice constellation of 7 stars. We find that near sun-like stars, there are 2, this one here and this one here. If you run back in time, around about 17,000 years ago, and we've got a second anomaly here that comes into contention, that lands in that little target area. It's another sun-like star by a Hungarian researcher, Martin Gob-Molnar, has proposed another star. It's underneath there, HD 284 as being sun-like. It fits into that target at 35,000 years ago. The evolution gradient is actually very consistent from the end of the Neanderthal going backwards. If you look at his skull differences in hundreds of thousands of years, it's very, very slight changes. And suddenly we are here, arrive, and where we are now. This is where I think that cataclysm took place around about 10,000 years ago. And that's where we are now. That's modern humans. If you compare hominid femur bones, there's quite a huge difference. We're the one on the left. Modern humans, Cro-Magnon man, have this very porous, very frail femur. And the one on the right is the Neanderthal. Every hominid had that same size, very dense bone, and a lot thicker. And you can see the thickness of the actual bone there compared to here. So all the apes, all the hominids, every creature in the animal kingdom seems to have very well adapted structural conditions for their bodies to live on our planet. However, our porous bones suggest that we might have had a different beginnings. Comparing skulls, the Australopithecus is one of the earliest hominids. That's his skull. This is the end of the hominids as far as I'm concerned, Neanderthal. You can see a slight resemblance, even with those two being on different sides of the spectrum. And here's us, Cro-Magnon man, modern humans suddenly appearing in large amounts, large numbers all over the world 35,000 years ago. I want to compare the skull of the chimpanzee to the Australopithecus. Look at the similarity between those two. How does evolution work? How can this one here be a modern ape and have such similarities to the Australopithecus? I think it's because obviously they're related and we can see close resemblances, but the modern human looks really different. Now, the beginnings of humanity, there seem to be two prime Homo sapiens sapiens. The one on the left, not many people know about. That is a skull from the Inca period of one of the elongated skulls of the Incas. This particular skull has a 1 liter extra volume of skull. I think it's alien. I think it's more alien than us, and it's probably some other human occupation in the beginning. But one thing that really stood out weird of these is to have birth of a head that size. We found the skeletal remains of a newborn baby with the exact same size head proportion, but obviously a child. And you'd have to have pretty wide hips to give birth to a head like that, wouldn't you? Look at Akhenaten's hips. He's a male. He's very unusual features. And quite interesting, he even carries that wide hip syndrome. A second thing that points him as being really a weak species is most of the skulls have got no teeth. They had gum disease, and they seem to have just died out quite early in their power and their reign, and they were treated as gods in the beginning. But let's look at our story, modern humans. Starting in Egypt, nobody knows that Akhenaten built 1,800 offering tables out of concrete, well, not concrete, sorry, out of limestone, which I like to call concrete because it's actually the same formula, and there's a lot of theory that some of the blocks could have actually been formed. But anyway, just looking at those offering tables as a fact in history, 1,800 offering tables. He spoke of this disc called the Aten that came down, and he supplied all this offering to the god of the Aten, a disc that shines like the sun. Could it have been the proverbial disc-shaped UFO that shines like the sun? Just take that as a maybe. But that offering table, with all that food, would it have just gone there to waste? 1,800 offering tables. He was one of those large head chappies right here, and Nefertiti, his wife. The Sphinx is thought to be the ultimate monument. I want to question that because I think there's another one. And what is the Sphinx looking at? He's looking at the sun rising in the east. Is it more than that? Is it possibly also that he's looking at the stars? Interesting thing about the Sphinx, it's got a completely flat back. It's like a little heliport. A helicopter could land quite easily on the back of that. And I think these are the remains of what once used to be a door. Now, there's an ancient tradition I'm going to show to you from a papyrus that seems to suggest Ra's first arrival here in this world, he could have landed on the back of that Sphinx. Why would he want to land on a raised area that was surrounded by water, that was actually right next to the River Nile and surrounded by water? Why would he want to land in such almost like a safety condition? Well, if it was over 10,000 years ago, there were obviously lions and crocodiles, and that would have been a safe place to get started. This papyrus is in the Egyptian Museum. It's quite interesting that it has what I believe is the Sphinx down here. Now, why do I think that's the Sphinx? The Egyptians were very good at putting in titles with every little important anomaly or a statue. That little goodie there is the Sphinx stela. And I think the shape of it tells the story directly. It also has this Waldock of Osiris. There was a statue under the Sphinx once. Now, Nut is the personification of the heavens, of all the stars, as a female goddess that gives birth to the stars. And from her womb, there's an utterance here that speaks of the birth of the Ra star from the womb of Nut. The sacred feminine was a big thing in Dan Brown's book, the sacred feminine being that V-shaped womb. And on the ground is the sacred temple. There is your beginnings of that mythology. There is the womb of Nut that stood, that triangle pointing down in the heavens. And following a pictoglyph, where the toes touch the ground, we have the leg of the bull constellation. So if I can solve what the leg of the bull constellation is, it's saying that this ship that Ra sailed down in, here's the blown up story of the whole theme here. The interaction of heaven and earth with gods and green-skinned people. I think it's green because he was the first earth human. But here is the ship of Ra. It's a disc, it has a dome, and has 3 legs and radiates multicolored light. Now, let's look into that legend of that strange anomaly on the back of the Sphinx. Starting off with tomb depictions, it says it was a ship that landed on the back of the Sphinx. Ra is seen here being venerated by important people. Notice the 2 heads of the Sphinx. And that's a really strange depiction, you might ask. Well, if you had to look at the ancients' obsession with sacred objects, they want to show both sides of the Sphinx. That's a very clever way of doing it. From the back part of the Sphinx, showing 2 elevations, left and right. So the whole Sphinx is included in a sacred picture. But Ra is on the back of the Sphinx in a ship. Another tomb image shows that the Sphinx might have been a lion head. There is the ship of Ra. It shows the beetle as well, the dung beetle that carries the sun disk in tradition. The secrets of the sun going beneath the ground of the Sphinx. Is this the Hall of Records? The secrets of our sun. But importantly, it's again through the back of the Sphinx. Another depiction in the tomb ruin with the sun being important underneath, the records of our sun perhaps, the ship, a boat that sailed down from the heavens. And another one shows it more like an egg. This is a cross-section through it. It's not a normal ship. It doesn't look anything like the sun bark. And another one. I think it was more than just a boat. I think it was a celestial ship, the real UFO phenomenon. They existed in ancient times. Now, this funny anomaly on the back of the Sphinx, you see that funny picture on the top? That is supposed to be a ceremonial fan. It's almost like a flag that in a ceremony where the king is paraded, he has 2 people in front walking with this depiction of it looks like a sun, a half sun shining. I want to look at the origin of that. There's a picture of that original fan, and that's what it looks like. They had a big stem of where the person would hold it. It was a primal main black piece on the bottom here, and these are feathers, bright colored feathers cut to pointed edges. Now, cutting a feather to a pointed edge doesn't make it an effective fan. If it was a normal fan, they would have wanted to obviously have a nice edge that didn't have all those little cuts. So they've made it pointed, signifying perhaps multicolored light radiating from the ship of Ra. And there's Ra inside it with his sun disk as an occupant inside it. Help the shape. There's your celestial ship again. There's a tablet that actually talks of the ceremonies, and they've got a model of the Sphinx with the ceremonial fan with a hole stuck in the back of it. There it is again, showing the ceremonial fan being presented. But look under the Sphinx. Is that an indentation or a little clue as to what is under the Sphinx? Looking at the way the pictographs work, Nut is touching one horizon to the other. Okay, so a pictogram tells a story for those that can't read. If the pictures are touching in ancient Egyptology, they're telling a story. It's touching the leg of the bull, and it has an utterance that the sun, star, secret comes from the womb. Now here's the big thing that I'm challenging. This whole worshipping of the son of Ra, and in ancient civilizations worshipping our sun, I challenge it. I believe it's another sun. It's another sun-like star in the heavens associated with this constellation of for whatever it is, whatever we find out that leg means. Right, let's look at the pyramids. The pyramids have, as far as I'm concerned, 2 primordial things. The 2 things that they depict. One is the layout of stars. I completely support Robert Bauval's theory. The second thing is it had something important that happened inside of it, which I believe was spiritual. Perhaps an induced out-of-body experience where they could traverse the heavens. I've got an image where you look at only those monuments that I've actually carefully re-rendered and taken out everything that is within 2,000 years of age. So that is now pre-2,000 years ago. That's what the whole plateau would have looked like. If you look at the top left corner, there's another causeway that goes to nowhere. I believe that is a ruin, and I'll show you why. Now, the Sphinx is right there. The Sphinx is positioned in front of these three. I'm going to follow Robert Bauval's theory that those three pyramids represent Orion's belt and measure the angle. The angle is Z. Now, if the Sphinx represents Leo in the sky, what does Leo look like? And what is the orientation between these two big pyramids and one small pyramid? So it'll be representing two big stars and one small star. Is this the right way to find Leo? And it is. To me, that's important, showing that Leo is the Sphinx. It's looking across the Nile River. In theory, it's looking at its own reflection in the sky. They look at the shape of Leo. It is the same shape as the side profile of the Sphinx. And the angle is only 1 degree out in the sky. It's about 44 point something. So it's quite likely that the Sphinx is telling us to look at all the pyramids. The Sphinx is speaking its secret. It's telling us to interpret the pyramids as stars. So let's do that. An early map showed me, quite amazingly, the original layout of the Giza Plateau when first researchers were able to document it. There's some very interesting anomalies on the plateau that don't exist anymore. Huge, big piles of rubble that have gone. They were still building Cairo after this. And this was a beautiful source of old blocks. There's our ruin that I want to add in as a definite pyramid ruin, because you'll see when we put the star picture over it, and I think there's another one in the sand here that has been documented. There's 4. If you draw lines through them, they all cross at one very important point. I think that's showing that there's a geometry layout. What I've done in this picture, I've made Orion's belt 3 times bigger, because for some reason, if you look at the comparison between the two, they've made Orion's belt. If this is Orion's belt, they made it 3 times larger to show the significance of it. I've made that 3 times bigger to fit. Orion's belt is that size. It's quite small. That's pretty amazing between the two. Yes, they do kind of cross all around that area, so the lines are very accurate. Obviously, on the ground, it's perfect. Now, let's look at the whole layout of the pyramid field. There are 50 pyramids in Lower Egypt. I believe it shows the whole 360-degree trip around the night sky. And it starts with where the most important part is, the middle of the star map. There's the Ground Zero monument. This is the ultimate monument in ancient Egypt. It was the obelisk of Ra. It was called the Sun Temple. It was probably about 100 feet tall, and it had a gold cap. The only one that we know for sure that was gold capped. But if you look at the layout of the pyramids, from one that's just over here to the last little bit down here, the 2 very big ones down here, Bent Pyramid, Red Pyramid, Saqqara, Giza's there. Let's look at this first half, this part here. Right, there's the one that I believe matches Sirius. It's a big pyramid. Giza is here with those new anomalies, fitting with Orion. The area of Zawayet al-Arian. That pyramid name is Zawayet al-Arian. The name of that star is Al-Deb Arian. The Al-Arian syllables seem to have passed through time. And there's this huge cluster down here near Abu Sur with this monument of the gold cap obelisk remained. The other half of the pyramid, from there again looking at the others, there's the 2 other very large pyramids, and of course we have very bright sequence magnitudes, Canopus and Akhnar. But I want to look at the most detailed part. Look at this area here. Now, what are the chances these stars are a really good match with the Saqqara pyramids? Looking at a satellite image, you can see how the pyramids have been butchered in time. There's huge, big, let's call them, it's like bloodshed. The white limestone, you can see where they've literally taken these monuments apart to build perhaps even ancient Egyptian temples. That's how old I believe they are. But the pattern, we have a large pyramid, small pyramid, large pyramid. We have little groupings down here, but compare the two. Okay, that's a simple graphic, so you can see stars of Andromeda. What are the odds that's a coincidence? Magnitudes equal to sizes of pyramids. In fact, I've been looking for ruins by following some other magnitudes up here, and guess what? They're in that image. If we go back, they're finding them. So we just have to follow the stars to find ancient monuments. Right. Looking at the area of Abasal, where this obelisk temple was built, I don't think it would have been built in a desert. Nobody would build these great cities in the beginning of Memphis. This is the peak area point of Memphis. It would have been green. No idiot would build in the desert. So I'm pretty sure it was a very basic climate with ample rain and a decent place to live. And that's what it looked like. To get an idea of the size of that monument, that is a 6-foot-high door there. That's all that's left of that pyramid cluster. And you can see remains of the old ruins being butchered. Big holes here where they're trying to look for gold, looking for tombs of gold. And what did they find? Empty sarcophagi. Looking at it from above, I believe it's the Pleiades constellation, and I'll show you why I think it's the Pleiades, but it's a very rough similarity, and there is the exit marks, the spot, which, by the way, fits in with one of those sun-like stars. Close up, there's your size of your 6-foot-high door. That's quite a big monument. A lot of gold needed for that capstone. This is the part that proves the leg of the bull had 7 stars in its makeup, and it was part of a celestial bull. I'm going to prove that the leg of the bull is the Pleiades, simply by looking at what the ancients knew about the zodiac signs. Close up, you can see one very independent star, 2 close together. That's exactly what we have at the Pleiades. And 2 at the top, 2 at the top, and then these have got little black dots in. They're trying to emphasize this is showing the way to something. There's an utterance that actually speaks of Isis extending a rope to find her sun, the sun star. Looking at the most important zodiac proof of history, going back way over 3,500 years ago, its main part is the middle. It has a birth scenario, a Genesis scenario of a hippo giving birth to the gods, and this weird leg of the bull, and he's holding a knife. Let's zoom in on there. First of all, I'll just show you. There's Cancer. Leo is the lion, Libra the scales, Scorpio, scorpion, Sagittarius, horse and person on top, Pisces. They're all there. Taurus was a bull. The bull is actually touching this whole area. When a pictogram touches its parts, it's actually linked to a story. But let's look closely at that hippo. Hippo, from the womb of the hippo, it's holding a knife. It's cut the leg of Taurus. It's set it astray in the heavens. It's a mythological story of the beginnings of the gods. So its womb, it's the birth of these gods. There's a bull-headed god with Isis and a star on top of a staff, a bull, and a bird. And it's in that position, following the leg to this ground zero. Now look at the orientation of the leg. It is a leg because it's standing upright. That is the right orientation for the constellation to be measured on the horizon. The ancients measured stars as they were born on the horizon. There's another little star here that has a name, so we have a pattern forming. There's an important star there, and there's another one forming like a triangle effect. So there's the only other star that's mentioned in this area. I believe it's the Pleiades, and I'll show you close-ups of the Pleiades comparing to the leg. That's the pattern. 2 sun-like stars, the Pleiades as a cluster of 7. In the temple of Senmut in Deir el-Bahari, there's an amazing depiction telling this whole story, and they've done it twice. Very dark, dingy tomb. That is on one part of the ceiling. It has the narrator pointing to the sky, looking at the leg constellation. It's got a bull's head on as a crown to show it's the leg of the bull of Taurus. It has to be Taurus if it's a constellation and it's leg of a bull. I believe that is being the personification of Orion as a bird-headed god. How weird is that? Why a bird-headed god? We'll try and reason that as well. But this tomb shows, for one above all the others, all the gods of the ancients, all on the bottom, with sun discs on their head. I'm proposing that it's not our sun. It's that sun. It's a Ra symbol. Let's have a close look at it. There it is, the circumpunct, the big part of the lost symbol. The star, the symbol that represents sun. I believe it's sun-like star here because it's shown with stars that you can only see at night. And it showed as a tiny, tiny little dot with a circle around it, the solar disk. Orion showing the way to the bull. Its title has even got the Orion 3-belt stars in it as well. And then you pass down 2 other stars to find it. That's exactly what we're doing with the with the stars. There's the two stars you follow in that direction, and a beam of light coming down from it. We'll see the importance of that beam of light tomorrow. If I had to make that more simple and take away all the detail, that's pretty much what it is. All the gods on the ground, the beginning, and the narrator telling the story, looking up at the sky, and it's following the belt stars to the leg, follow the leg, and that's it. To find the star of Ra, I believe the place of human ancestors. Looking back at the Sphinx now, what was the Sphinx looking at? That is the view of the Sphinx. With these stars being born on the horizon, the leg is in the upright position, and those solar discs mentioned. They said there were possibly 2 solar monuments, but we can't prove it. But we know for that one as being the exit marks the spot. So the Sphinx is also watching the birth of that star of Ra. That pattern, just familiarizing yourself with that pattern. So I'm going to show it quite a lot. Leg of the bull, one important, second important. Lalibela, keeping to the Africa theme, has a similar star map. That is the temple of the cross, built out of solid carved stone. It's amazing that they can carve a whole church out of that granite. It's not granite, it's actually softer, but to carve it out of the side of a rock, that is amazing. The whole theme must include the group of temples here. It makes this weird leg shape, and another grouping down here. Those are the 12 churches of Lalibela, carved out of stone. Look at the shape of that layout plan. Looking at the supposed cradle of civilization as Sumeria, the Akkadian Persian Empire, they built pyramids. They also said their gods were bird-headed. Now, why would they choose this bird-headed god? We have to keep asking that question. They also did the same as the Egyptians, and they have the disk with wings that flies, and 7 celestial bodies, an important star, and a crescent. And I challenge the crescent here because I don't think it's the moon. I think it's probably a planet bathed in the light of the star, being crescent-shaped because that is the source of its light, that sun. Another Sumerian artifact, it's in the Berlin Museum. It shows very neatly the stars now more in detail rather than just round blobs. But he also shows a man inside this area, call it the disc that flies, the wing disc, but doesn't show wings on it. He's showing it more mechanically, and a man dressed up like a Roman without the normal Sumerian dress type garment that he would wear. And it looks like he's holding a lever and some other apparatus here, but of course the important star that is associated with this is right there. So I'm saying it's that star map again. Now, scroll seals are found all over the ancient Sumerian Empire. You can't really date them, but they use these little seals, and they're actually like little roller stones that were carved with a very neat indentation of what they found sacred. I believe that would be showing Orion, the world of the gods, the flying disc, the Pleiades, and those 4, I've made 3 different colors. Oh, and the star. So we have 4 themes that keep appearing. Yellow star, blue Pleiades, that green crescent. Here the disc that flies is shown with fire underneath it, not the proverbial wings. And of course, that is the orientation that is correct, with Orion rising being vertical, and these match the Pleiades very, very well. Okay, the seal looks like that there. It's a round object that rolls out the seal and makes the pattern. Same thing again. This flying disc, 7 stars, 1 star, and the crescent. Same thing. And more. They're everywhere. The British Museum has, I think, about 8 of them, and they all refer to these as the Pleiades. This particular one looks like a hunter hunting a bull as Orion. Something really weird on the back here. I think Eric Van Daniken would say what that is. He would probably call it that ancient rocket. I still believe it would be the disc that flies is the big deal, because that's touching down also on the back. The Borobudur temples. Now, I just wanted to throw this in to show you the similarity in different parts of the world. We have the crescent as well here, being the sickle-shaped crescent, 7 heavenly bodies, a sun disk, or another sun-like star. But what has been missed in this, and my friend Molnar Gob Molten from Hungary showed that this umbrella was just like the ceremonial fan. They used an umbrella to show the importance of the disc that flies. That is the close-up detail of one of them and a little one next to it that you can hardly see it there behind it. So it has the same teaching theme in different parts of the world of these flying discs. Looking at the UK, now what does the UK have that fits in with pyramid civilizations? Stonehenge is very hard to look at when you're walking around it. It looks pretty much like a whole bunch of stones and chaos. But when you look at it from above, you can see the horseshoe shape in the middle and the two circles around it. The Ra symbol, one could say the middle part is the Ra symbol, the round part, and the ring is the outer edge, making it a giant symbol that's visible from the sky. But why do that? Close up, you can see the horseshoe-shaped lintels in the middle of the 5 trilithons. To understand its meaning, I got this clue from a place called Dodds Law. It's quite far away from Stonehenge, a couple of 100 k's, but it seems to carry the legend of Stonehenge. In this picture, I believe that is Stonehenge with a causeway because it has 2 rings of stones and a causeway, and it's telling you to look across from Stonehenge in this marked out area on the ground where the 7 orbs, and a pathway was going to that as well, a causeway. So what I had to do was go to Stonehenge and look across the valley and see if there are any other important 6,000-year-old ruins that would be similar age to Stonehenge. At that time, it was 6,000 years, but they found that Stonehenge might be a lot older. That is across the valley from Stonehenge, the Winterbourne Stoke Barrows. Look at that pattern. Isn't it similar to the Pleiades? And it aligns, of course, facing east, just like the causeway of Stonehenge. Stonehenge, by the way, has 2 anomalies in the outer ring. There's actually once 4 anomalies, but you can see 2 clearly, but there were actually 4 round barrows, like orbiting planets around that. If this is my star map, and that is where the sun is, where it is, the ancient sun of the sun-like stars near the Pleiades, it's not our sun. What is it saying to us? Looking at Stonehenge from the sky, there's Winterbourne Stoke. That's Stonehenge. Massive sacred area there that is full of barrows that they won't excavate. They won't let people plant crops there. Same down here. Very important. Compare it to the stars. Is it the same thing? There's another anomaly I'm going to look at tomorrow there. We'll discuss that tomorrow. The pattern of the Dendara, Egypt, is what we have with their leg, a star, and a star, which is exactly that. Okay? Right, looking at probably the largest pyramid empire in the world, the Maya, the Olmec, the Aztec. They fill that area from the edge of South America right up to Mexico. That's a lot of pyramid ruins, and they've probably only gone through about 5% of them in excavation. Looking at some of the things they found so far, bird-headed gods. They show that he could fly with wings, but they also show his helmet, the bird-type analogy over his head, a man inside weird masks. That looks like a racing helmet. I think that is the origin of the bird-headed mask. Look at this one here. Is that jewelry? Or are we looking at headphones, microphone, and some breathing apparatus, like in a hospital where you breathe oxygen, something that connects into his nose? Why would he want to do that? Same with this one, helmet with a breathing device, but no protection on the body. And Von Daniken, I think, found this one with the tank on the back of it. I honestly believe these folks, when they come and visit, are used to bacteria from a different world, and breathing in our bacteria might be quite hazardous. Looking at the earliest Mayan temples, I would say Tikal is the ground zero so far, whatever's been documented. That's how they find them, covered in soil. They're very ancient. And this group, I'm going to mark out on a map, showing how old they are. Yeah, they are there. They're marked yellow. That little cluster, 3 causeways, and a pyramid. Look at that pattern. Same as Stonehenge. Same as that in Dendara. We're getting much better detail now compared to the Pleiades. You can see the two. It's looking a lot similar now. It's getting a lot more accurate. Right, let's look across the UK, across the sea to France. There's a cave called the Hall of Bulls in Lascaux, the first modern human remains. What do we have here? A bull having killed a man with a weird-shaped head. Look at his head closely. Is that a bird head? How can we be sure? That's how we can be sure. There's an actual bird with the same artistic drawing, and his arms are outstretched. That is also unusual. And I don't think he's dead. The male anatomy is shown very, very importantly. What could that mean? Well, there's Taurus, the bull. There's Orion. Are we looking at the male symbol for Orion? Not a belt, but part of the male anatomy. That's quite a wild theory. But what if in that cave there's something even more detailed showing that that is a star map? And there it is. On the other side of the cave, a bull. Some scientists believe that this is a marking of the Pleiades, but please ignore the bull because that's just a coincidence. They couldn't have known it's Taurus. Orion is here. And that's what we've been looking at. Orion, bull, Pleiades. Look at the angle that we're going off to. And look what we've got here. A line going off. I'm going to zoom in on that line there. And some kind of a blotch. What could it be? I think it's the Pleiades, and I've got a feeling what I think that is. That's the blotch. It looks just like a blotch, but to me, I'm looking for a face or some kind of human depiction. You'll see why. I think it's a bearded man, 2 eye sockets, but it's such a blur, it's very hard to say. Looking at those star formations again. Now, what I've drawn is the perfect sort of rendition of these stars. That'll be the perfect star map. I need to get that kind of accuracy to have a solid theory. Well, we need to also put important monuments in these 2 positions. So one could be a face or one could be a human form. We need things that show some kind of a human picture if it was deciphering a message. If I found that star map, that would be the X that marks the spot, proving my star map theory, even measuring the smaller stars in between. It exists. It's on Mars, and nobody wants to believe it. Those are pyramid ruins. As far as I'm concerned, there's a big face monument there, and there's this huge big pyramid with a triangulated edge, a 5-sided pyramid. Matching that. Let's put it against the stars. I'm going to go to and fro very slowly. Look at the finer details, and then I'm going to show a zoom in as well. Looking closely at the layout of these anomalies, look at this area down here. We have a triangulation. Yes, that could be explained with that one. We have 3 in a row down here. Yep, we have a whole bunch going through that way. This is a large anomaly. It could have been either a star that blinked out, because there is this nebula around here. Something has happened in that area to cause the dust, the cosmic dust. There's the largest star, Alcyone, largest pyramid. These lines are all parallel. Sacred geometry, that's a trapezium. Obviously, that's not a trapezium, but when they're laid out on the ground, they seem to make the geometry absolutely perfect. Interesting point, if you do an X-ray photograph of the Pleiades, there's a huge source of radiation from a star that died there, so I believe that was a brighter star. And we should have 2 little stars here. There's a big crater there as well, so even what's missing has an answer for it if you look closely. So, as you're looking at the Pleiades now with a telescope, you're not going to see much. Sun-like stars are that size. That is the sun-like star, that tiny, tiny little dot there. So obviously, because they're near to us, these are 700 light years away and more, and sun-like stars are actually around about 200 light years away, 300 light years away. And I'm going to show you, measuring one of those stars, which is that one there in the corner, tiny little dot. We'll zoom in. 2,000 years ago, it moves to there. 4,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, 10,000, and about 17,250 years ago, it lands in that circle. There's a circle there, but it's not in the middle. I was hoping it would be exactly in the middle. But if you put the Mars face in, it lands right on the all-seeing eye. And actually, that was my conclusion in the book, that there's this weird thing on the forehead, and, okay, it lands on the forehead. Maybe that's where it's supposed to land. But there's more to that, because there's something on that Mars face that has only recently been discovered. First of all the sun gods of our ancient cultures carry something on the forehead. That's a Maya sun god. Okay, we have on the top of the foreheads, and all of them, something important. The bearded sun god of the Inca, a star right in the middle, between the eyes almost. On the Sphinx as a sun god. Also the Uranus cobra linking to the heavens as a cosmic serpent. The new picture of Mars shows something on the forehead. And when that image was released, they said, aha, this is not a face. It has 2 noses. I beg to differ. There was something like a little pyramid monument on the forehead of the Mars face. Looking at Tikal close up now, looking at Mars, isn't there a similarity in this weird pattern Okay, going the wrong way. Comparing the two together now. That grouping with the Mars grouping, that is remarkably similar. I think that is beyond coincidence. Looking at what's left of Egypt, there's a lot of monuments under the sand still. One person said there were 9 pyramid ruins there in the first excavations that were done over 80 years ago. So we can only guess where the remains are, but yes, it would be similar to Mars. The Mars face, looking at it closely, the new resolution image is so stunning. It shows an eye remains on the right-hand side there. I don't know if you could make out. It's just a faint remains of an eye. And the detail on it is absolutely amazing. I believe that's what it once looked like. It's the statue of Zeus. And he had an open mouth for some reason, like he breathed out something important, perhaps the breath of life. Some said this is the face of God. I want to query that question, why they would want to call something like that the face of God. That little white dot there, that's the space shuttle if it were to land on there, just to compare size. So I've shown the space shuttle for size comparison. Look at all the debris around here, look like blocks. The new images show a lot more than things that kind of look like blocks. These are all the different pieces of the Mars face, showing debris patterns everywhere with these oblong-shaped rocks. What are the chances it has been built? Especially that one there, you can see some closer detail in the middle. Can we build monuments with giant blocks? Well, that's my partner standing in front of 2 portions of block work. Now, the top part is limestone. The bottom part is actually granite. That granite part is actually a tile. It's a 1-foot thick tile. They put granite tiles on the outside of this temple. I mean, how weird is that? Giant blocks with weird shapes that they cut these slanting edges. How can they build like that? Maybe the ground zero monuments at the Sphinx, when they first built, they used their old habit of building with large blocks, that it wasn't as efficient as on Mars because of our gravity, that they needed to go a bit smaller, but that's still very impressive. Mars face. This is my latest breakthrough. It actually happened 3 days ago. I was reading from a Masonic Bible that showed a little bit more on the Jacob story in details, because the Jacob story is the ladder that came down from heavens, where Jacob dealt with angels, and the angels were telling him about the most important places in the heavens, which I'm going to show tomorrow. And this face monument on the borders of Israel is across the Jordan River, and you can find it on Google Earth. I've got the coordinates up on my web pages. This is going to stir a lot of anxiety in historical circles, because this monument, according to archaeology, is over 10,000 years old. I'm going to cover all that in great detail tomorrow and explain what Jacob said about this face. There's a big twist in the story. These monuments were built so massive, you can only see them from space. Couldn't question that reason. Why would they want to make them so damn big that we've missed them up until now? There's got to be something really important to make them that big. And I'm going to cover that tomorrow. And there's going to be an extra star that comes into play here. The one on the top left part of the picture is one that moves as well, that goes back over 100,000 years. And that one I'm going to query tomorrow as well as being very important. So for tomorrow, I'm going to look at what happened after the time of Christ. From 2,000 years ago, has this secret, if it is real, is it that important? Has it carried forward in time? You're going to see it in the Christ story. You're going to see it in the original King Solomon ancient texts. You're going to see it in ancient secret society, the Templars, the Freemasons, the layout of the Vatican, and Washington, D.C. So that's the best part coming, and that'll be tomorrow. Thanks, folks. adapted structural conditions for their bodies to live on our planet. However, our porous bones suggest that we might have had a different beginnings. Comparing skulls, the Australopithecus is one of the earliest hominids. That's his skull. This is the end of the hominids as far as I'm concerned, Neanderthal. You can see a slight resemblance, even with those two being on different sides of the spectrum. And here's us, Cro-Magnon man, modern humans suddenly appearing in large amounts, large numbers all over the world 35,000 years ago. I want to compare the skull of the chimpanzee to the Australopithecus. Look at the similarity between those two. How does evolution work? How can this one here be a modern ape and have such similarities to the Australopithecus? I think it's because obviously they're related and we can see close resemblances, but the modern human looks really different. Now, the beginnings of humanity, there seem to be two prime Homo sapiens sapiens. The one on the left, not many people know about. That is a skull from the Inca period of one of the elongated skulls of the Incas. This particular skull has a 1 liter extra volume of skull. I think it's alien. I think it's more alien than us, and it's probably some other human occupation in the beginning. But one thing that really stood out weird of these is to have birth of a head that size. So there's the Pleiades, very nice constellation of 7 stars. We find that near sun-like stars, there are 2, this one here and this one here. If you run back in time, around about 17,000 years ago, and we've got a second anomaly here that comes into contention, that lands in that little target area. It's another sun-like star by a Hungarian researcher, Martin Gob-Molnar, has proposed another star. It's underneath there, HD 284 as being sun-like. It fits into that target at 35,000 years ago. The evolution gradient is actually very consistent from the end of the Neanderthal going backwards. If you look at his skull differences in hundreds of thousands of years, it's very, very slight changes. And suddenly we are here, arrive, and where we are now. This is where I think that cataclysm took place around about 10,000 years ago. And that's where we are now. That's modern humans. If you compare hominid femur bones, there's quite a huge difference. We're the one on the left. Modern humans, Cro-Magnon man, have this very porous, very frail femur. And the one on the right is the Neanderthal. Every hominid had that same size, very dense bone, and a lot thicker. And you can see the thickness of the actual bone there compared to here. So all the apes, all the hominids, every creature in the animal kingdom seems to have very well
So our next speaker is the author of a book called Hidden Records, looking at ancient civilizations and star maps and many other fascinating subjects. He's come from Cape Town for the weekend, so please give a warm welcome to Wayne Herschel.
What were the ancients thinking? The question obviously is why would they build giant megaliths, pyramids, and is there any connection between these ancient civilizations? Well, my research looks into something that I prefer to describe as hidden records, records that are not easily available. And in the last few years, I've found that they were also forbidden because my book was interfered with, and I've had in the US market, had my book removed 4 times, and I'm in the 5th time doing it now. So there's something in here that isn't quite making people in the world happy, some very important people, but you can see for yourselves what you think it might be. I'm going to put this right by my mouth. Okay. My first slide. A picture of the earth and the stars. Now, if there was some kind of message in ancient civilizations from where we came from, wouldn't we be looking for their fingerprints, stars, star formations, and is there anything that we can find? And of course, where do we come from? That's one of the biggest important questions to any human being is who are we? Where do we come from? The missing link is a real scientific fact. There's a huge bridge between hominid and humans. And if I found something that was unanimous with all of them, wouldn't that be possible proof? If it's a statistical figure that comes up hundreds of times. The stars you see there, the little blue stars at the top, I can use the laser here, over there, are the Pleiades, and Orion on the left, over there, are the two star formations that seem to be most common in history. It seems up until the time of the end of the Neanderthal, we have a very primitive hominid record on all the records of skeletons and human remains. I wouldn't call this chappie human because he's far from human. That is a recent rebuild of the Neanderthal face. So up until maybe 200,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, this is the creature of this planet. Our planet was the planet of the apes for a very long time, until just recently, the blink of an eye, 200,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, suddenly we're everywhere. Replaced by what? Modern humans of all races in every continent, suddenly. The dating of this we'll question in part 2 tomorrow, but I honestly believe it was an invasion. I believe we are the descendants of people that came here. They had a very advanced beginnings, but something wiped us clean off the slate that brought us back to hunters and gatherers. And I believe the flood did that, and we'll look into those details. Just to get a bit of star information, Orion's belt. Following the stars, most people know the three belt stars of Orion. The brightest star is Sirius. There's the three belt stars. You just follow the road to get to Taurus, the celestial bull. It was sacred in ancient civilizations. And of course, the Pleiades down here, and an important star. Looking at those two constellations, that's all you have to remember. Just those three are very important to point the way to something in the sky that's important. And the leg formation can be used as a pointer. It looks like a celestial leg of the bull. The Egyptians said it was the leg of the bull, following it to there. So we have two coordinates. Or if you measure from here, you can measure actually 33 degrees of arc measurement in the sky. Astronomers measure in arc degrees. That's 33 degrees from that piece of Orion right up to there. If you're looking closely at the stars, you'll see the star maps have got one very important monument. If you look at all of them, this is a very important part in the sky. Secondly, there's another one down here. You can just see it. That'll come up a lot in the next few slides.